Oh boy. So I took the blanket off the air conditioner. I went out and had another cup of coffee. And ever since I came back in, that has been going on and off like repeatedly. Which in normal world I would think that would just turn on until it reached its temperature and then it would shut off. But no, instead it's blasting and blasting, and I'm now sneezing, and the dog was just sneezing. Um, so, yet again. And yes, that's what's coming out of that. Then the refrigerator was going on and off. Okay, so, which doesn't help what I'm just about to say. I got a comment on there from somebody, one of my comment section, and people are more than welcome to look at that, I guess. I don't know how this really works, to be honest. I'm not an internet kind of person and don't know a ton about YouTube. And I guess it's bottom line is I don't really give a shit. I'm doing this for one reason and one reason only, to stop being raped, sodomized, and tortured and watching my animals suffer. Which I want to take them outside, but I'm considering it. I'm waiting for the sun to come up so I can see. And anyhow, he said, I sound just like his sister who's schizophrenic, please get help. And then the next comment was, go to the police. I'll respond to the first thing. Probably. I probably do sound like a schizophrenic person. You're not the first person to, I think, suggest that on the YouTube thing. I'm going to share something with you. When I was about 18 years old, I was hospitalized for an eating disorder. I was anorexic and bulimic, much like a lot of women. My anorexia and bulimia came from the fact that I was being sexually assaulted at home, much like a lot of people who have been diagnosed with eating disorders. And while I was in there, I ate everything they said to eat because I wanted to get the fuck out of it. I was 80-something pounds, and for me, although my set point weight is probably like 100, 105 really, because I'm actually a very small person, it was thin for me. And I only really have one picture of me during that time where I saw, like, I can see how thin I was. Because back then I don't remember, really. I remember being anorexic and bulimic, but I don't remember what I looked like. Anyhow, so I was in there, and, unlike all the other eating disorder people there who would hide food or try to not eat or whatever, I literally ate everything they gave me. And they would give you snacks that were whole sandwiches in between all the meals. And, it didn't make me afraid or anxious. I just wanted to eat it and get the fuck out of there. And the counselors that would come by and sit down and talk to me during my stay in there were all like, I don't know why you're in here and everything. And, it was whatever. Anyhow, the facility that I was in was not just for eating disorder people. We were put in with everybody else. And there were schizophrenics there. And I had a guy who became very interested in me. And that wasn't the guy that worked there that started calling me after I left and that fired because he did that. He was in there and he was schizophrenic. And later on, I actually saw him when he came out of the facility. I ran into him at Al Moana. And he was schizophrenic. And it was a little scary because he got kind of like, he would make gifts for me, because we did arts and crafts and stuff, and he would make gifts for me and all this stuff, and follow me around, and, it was a little concerning because I was like in a locked-in facility with people who, and I couldn't lock my door, I couldn't do any of those things. I just ate whatever the fuck they gave me to get the fuck out of there. And after I left, I did get better. And they did try to force, the dietitian and the psychiatrist tried to force me to deal with the sex abuse. I was not willing at that time to recognize it or acknowledge it, for myself or to anybody else. Later on, I was. It took many more years after that. But they tried to, get my parents to deal with it too. And the moment they confronted my parents about it, then my parents just never came to visit me or anything. And anyhow, I have never been diagnosed with anything, and I have sought out therapy and been in therapeutic settings for the result of being abused for such an extended period of time, which I was, because the abuse continued after that. It continued until I acknowledged it. Just like I was talking about shining the light on stuff. As soon as you shine a light on abuse, especially incest, things like that, they tend to stop automatically, the actual physical part, because it's no longer a secret, it's no longer hidden, and a lot of those people can't operate in the light of day, but it took me many years to come to terms with that. And that was because it was decades of grooming, and your mother doesn't love you, and I'm the only one that loves you, and, just all of that. They really, really, really want this to happen tonight. Because I have a couple more hours until light, which I'm hanging on by a thread. Not really, because I just had another cup of coffee. Woo! But the thing about being schizophrenic, because I've been really, it's really kind of interesting to look at people now who, I've always been very open to talking to people and having, when I first moved to LA, there was a park that I lived right next door to, and there were homeless people that lived there. When I returned, that park had become overrun with them, but, and some of them were really mentally not well, and some of them were just former drug addicts and maybe a little not well. But I talked to a lot of them. I'm a very open person and a very curious person about people, and I'm analytical. I love to analyze, stuff. I met a homeless guy that lived in his van. He was an Asian dude. I think he was Japanese, and he owned a home in Hollywood Hills. But he lived in his van since his wife died. I met a woman who clearly at one point was a drug addict and probably a drinker. She had a cat and a dog that lived in there, and we, I got to know her. Yes, there's usually some mental illness. But one thing I started to think about through my ordeal, in the fact that the stuff that I'm going through does sound like that, because I don't have any, besides getting an STD, and having my asshole ripped open, and catching my property manager on my video camera in the Windsor lofts, and then her quitting the next day, or never coming into work the next day and then quitting after that, or having that woman from the police department try to break into my house and then lie about it, make false police report against me, and I don't not have any evidence. It's more that I don't have enough, and I get that, and I get how it sounds, and for me to sit here and say, there's someone in the attic, everybody here is waiting to rape me, I know how that sounds, or that keeps kicking on. But see, I know how those work. They don't work like this. They don't kick off and then turn back on right away. This is that. But it did make me start thinking about, I have inhaled a lot of this shit all for hours and hours. And you can see that in my eyeballs. And no, my animals aren't just tired. I will videotape them in the morning. I should have done that this morning. They were just um, toast. Um, but it's made me think, what if, and I don't know, but what if some schizophrenics, and if your sister truly is schizophrenic and you truly are a real person that is watching these and has any concerns, what if schizophrenics are just people that see things that other people don't? I mean, it's just crossed my mind because the shit I'm going through is fucking nuts. And when I say it out loud, it makes me sound crazy. But I don't have a choice about saying what's happening. And I know, and science backs it up, that if you have, experienced, I mean, if you're in a war zone, you're probably going to leave the war zone with more sensitive hearing than the average person, because your hearing keeps you safe. Knowing if the enemy is approaching. I mean, I've never been in a war situation. I'm just assuming. And again, it's not that you hear things that other people can't hear. It's that your brain and the way you're processing the information that comes at every human being in your environment is different. And everybody concentrates on different stuff. Like if you were a musician, you'd be more in tuned if you're listening to music to hear different inflections and different, patterns than someone like me, who I played the steel drums when I was like in elementary school, and it was super cool and super fun, but I don't know shit about music, I love dancing, but I don't know shit about music, really. So, I don't know. It just made me think. I don't know if it's true. When I was in that facility, a girl came in who I went to high school with, and she had been, I didn't know her very well, but she was friends with somebody who I was good friends with, and all I knew about her is that she was really smart and seemed kind of conservative, maybe, like not a partier, not, but she was sort of in the popular crowd, which I was not. I knew people in all different groups. I was a floater. But she walked in there one day when I was just sitting at the table eating one of my sandwiches, and she had her head shaved off, and I recognized her immediately, and I was like, whoa. Turns out she was bipolar. And one night when we were there, and we were out on the lanai, and I was smoking a cigarette, and I was out there with her and another girl who was really tiny, and I don't remember her very well. But all of a sudden, this girl said, let's get on the roof. And I was like, I'm going to go inside. Like, I don't want anything to do with whatever the fuck's going to happen. And I feel bad in retrospect that I wasn't. I think I felt like in an awkward position of like ratting somebody out that was a nice person. Anyhow, her and this other girl got on the roof, and I could hear them. And everybody else could hear them too, including all the people that work there. You could hear them tromping around on the roof. And apparently they jumped off the roof, and then at some point the other girl broke her leg. I'm not sure when. The girl I knew, got sent to like the padded room or whatever. I never saw that room, but I knew it existed. And then she came out and she told me the whole thing. She's like, we got on the roof, da-da-da. Anyhow, she ended up getting on some pretty hardcore medications, and she, I guess, had been at like Princeton or something and just had a mental break, and was diagnosed as bipolar. Over the years I saw her. Hawaii's very small, off and on. I'd see her here and there. The last time I saw her was in Waikiki. She was going to a movie with her mom, and she told me she was living at home with her mom. She'd gained a bunch of weight. She did not look happy. Her face was broken out. She said that the medication she was on made her feel really yucky, and she looked miserable. She ended up hanging herself. So I don't not know about mental illness, but I can tell you from dealing with my own eating disorder and then coming to terms with why I had the eating disorder and why I did try to commit suicide numerous times, was the sex abuse that was going on in my home, that I've never been diagnosed with an illness, and even in the beginning of this, after they killed my dogs, which was the first year when they killed Sage and Bailey, and they had already poisoned Suela, who survived, I did go and get help because I couldn't stop crying in public. I was so upset about them killing my dogs. Just devastated. I was a different person than I am now. I hadn't been through all of this. I even asked, and he was one of the best psychiatrists on the island, because I had sent one of my clients there when I worked with kids, CPS kids, and she had been assaulted. He had a history, or not history, kind of a specialty in working with people who were victims of sex assault. So I had sent one of my clients there, one of my, whatever. And so I went there because by then I had already been dealing with my own shit and facing it, and had gone to groups and therapy, and really, I have said this before. I thought I was addressing those issues. What I never did was, number one, cut off contact with those people completely, which I think in retrospect really needed to happen. And I tried, but they wouldn't let me go, and I was too enmeshed, codependent, which is all constructed. But the bigger thing is I never really came to terms with the fact that it wasn't my fault. I didn't ever stop blaming myself. I didn't put the blame where it should have been. I felt like I deserved it. And for no reason. I didn't do anything. I wasn't a bad kid. I really wasn't. And, any problems that they had with me were a result of being assaulted. And that would be trying to commit suicide. Just because I was tired of being afraid all the time in my own home and not seeing any way out. I thought about running away and being scared about not knowing where I'd go, and afraid of, what would happen if I ran away. I think logically I was smart enough to know that I was probably going to end up in a very similar circumstance that I was already in, but with somebody, but with less means. But I felt like I had chose it instead of it being what it really was, which was I was groomed, and the circumstance was created for me to be in that circumstance. But I never really could accept that I was not responsible. And I truly believe that's why this situation, because I believe in life that you get handed, I believe every woman that's abused, if you do not face the reasons why it's not your fault, but why you ended up in that situation or attracted to that person or whatever, that you will end up with somebody else like that if you get out of that situation. I think that if you can't change it's not your part of it, but your own, all I can say for myself is I still felt like a victim. I still saw myself as a victim. I still felt like a victim, and I felt like it was my fault. And I was perfect pickings for these guys. And perfect pickings for my family to say, fuck this, we don't believe her, because then that went into the dialogue of, oh, okay, then we can go back and say all that other stuff wasn't true. I ask that you please research victims of sex assault. Watching those soft white underbelly videos, it's very clear that there's so much systematic, just there's so many similarities between victims and how they end up just being treated the same way over and over and over again. And they're drawn to those things, and so, no, I don't have schizophrenia. I don't. I know I don't. I wish I did, in a way, because then the solution would be easier than this. And so that's your answer to, I might sound like your sister. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with your sister. I don't know. I don't know if there's real demons in the world. I don't even know, and you won't know either. That's the bottom line truth of the matter. I mean, the world is so fucking weird and so screwed up, and there's so much weird shit going on, and drugs make people really fucking weird, I don't know what to say. I don't know your sister. But I would think more about it and think about really, I don't know. I don't know. But I know that I'm not. And to say go to the police, I think about it all day long. And sometimes I do. If I had fallen asleep tonight and been brutally raped and sodomized, I probably would have gone to the hospital tomorrow. Probably. Because in those moments, it's the pain, the emotional and the physical combined has become overwhelming for me. I still probably should have gone to the hospital for what happened to me, how many days ago now? Because there were too many, they were too close together, those really bad gang raping things that I still have a sore bottom. It's not that easy. It's not that easy to go through things and then have people not believe you. And if you look at anybody that is a victim and you really look at the people that went out against Marilyn Manson, these are women with power, money, position, people, and they still were afraid to not be believed. It's not easy when you're already being victimized and then have to fight to be believed. And that's just so common. Like, literally, that's being a victim. That's the second victimization of it. It's first you're victimized by your perpetrator, and then you're victimized by society. And that is the system that we have, and that is the world that we live in. So, I'm very sorry if this is a true story and that your sister is schizophrenic. I do think that there are people with severe mental illnesses. Like I said, I met that man. And yeah, it was sad. Because I couldn't really talk to him, He didn't really understand, like, when I tried to conversate with him and sort of guide the conversation in a way that made him understand that I wasn't interested in him or that we're just friends or whatever. It was impossible. And I was sitting there trying to get my own shit together so I could get the fuck out. And I got out in 2 weeks. I gained weight fast. And then I stayed in therapy, saw a dietitian, and slowly but surely, I stopped doing the bulimia stuff. I started widening my food base, and just, I can't say I got better necessarily. The reason why I was doing it didn't really get better, but I did stop that behavior. So, not schizophrenic. Wish I was, in a way. Just because, oh my God, it would be so nice if this weren't real. If I didn't have to watch this. Like, literally. You don't believe me? You're in Utah. Anybody that you know in Utah? I'm welcome to come and help. See for yourself. That's what I would say to somebody that's really doubting what I'm saying is, You need to factually check out the information for yourself instead of making a decision like that, because labeling somebody who is actually being raped, sodomized, and tortured and watching their animals be tortured every day is dangerous. You're enabling them. And that happens a lot in society. And perpetrators count on that. Like somebody like Marilyn Manson, he counts on the fact that those women wouldn't be believed. They all do. They're master manipulators. So, anyhow, that's that. It's really late. I am really tired. I'll try to make more videos of what's happening, but you don't believe me? You want to help me? Help me catch them.